That's when I saw his real face for the first time. There are moments in life that never leave you. Moments that shake you so deeply that no matter how much time passes, the memory always feels fresh. This story is about one of those moments. For the longest time, I thought I truly knew him. He wasn't just someone in the background of my life. He was someone I trusted, someone who made me believe that what I saw was real. His words, his smile, the way he carried himself, everything about him seemed genuine. At least, that's what I thought. It's strange how we ignore the small signs. A glance that feels a little too heavy, a story that doesn't quite add up, a laugh that seems rehearsed. I brushed all those moments aside because I wanted to believe the person standing in front of me was exactly who he claimed to be. We all do that, don't we? We choose comfort over doubt, even when our gut whispers something isn't right. But the truth has a way of revealing itself, no matter how tightly it's hidden. And for me, that truth came crashing down one evening. It was so sudden, so unexpected, that I didn't even have time to prepare myself. In a single instant, the mask slipped. The carefully built image I had trusted for so long shattered before my eyes, and standing there was someone I had never seen before. That was the exact moment everything changed. My heart raced, my hands shook, and I realized the person I thought I knew wasn't real at all. And that's when I saw his real face for the very first time. In that moment, when I finally saw his real face, I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. But to understand why it hit me so hard, you need to know how it all began. He wasn't a stranger who suddenly appeared in my life. He had been there for a while, slowly weaving himself into my days, making his presence feel natural, almost necessary. At first, he was just someone I met through a mutual friend. Nothing out of the ordinary. But he had this way about him, calm, approachable, the kind of person who seemed like he could understand you without you having to say much. We started talking more, and soon he became a regular part of my routine. Whether it was grabbing coffee, late-night conversations, or just random check-ins, he always seemed to be around. And the strange thing was, it never felt forced. He had this charm, this ability to make anyone feel comfortable. People liked him instantly, and I was no different. I told myself I was lucky to have found someone so genuine. But as time passed, little things began to catch my attention. Small, almost invisible cracks in his stories. He would talk about his past, but sometimes the details didn't line up. One day he would say one thing, and the next day, the same story would sound different. At first, I thought maybe I was just overthinking. After all, everyone forgets details sometimes. But the more I paid attention, the more I noticed. His words didn't always match his actions. His smile, the one that seemed so warm, sometimes didn't quite reach his eyes. Still, I brushed it all aside, telling myself that no one is perfect. But deep down, a quiet uneasiness had started to grow. It was subtle, like a shadow following me around, never fully seen but always there. I didn't want to admit it then, but a part of me was afraid of what I might discover if I looked too closely. And yet, as much as I tried to ignore it, I couldn't escape the feeling that something about him wasn't what it seemed. Something was hiding behind that face I thought I knew. And that's what made the moment I finally saw the truth so unforgettable. The more time I spent around him, the more I began to notice patterns I couldn't explain. He always seemed to know things he shouldn't. Small details about my day, conversations I hadn't shared with anyone else, even little habits I thought nobody noticed. At first, I laughed it off, thinking he was just very observant. But sometimes, it didn't feel like observation. It felt like he already knew things before they happened. That was when the uneasiness inside me began to grow into something heavier. I remember one evening when a group of us were out together. Everyone was relaxed, joking, enjoying themselves. He, of course, was in the center of it all, telling stories, making people laugh, pulling everyone into his orbit.
But I watched closely that night.
Behind the laughter and the charm, there was something else, something calculated in the way he controlled the room, almost as if every word he said had been carefully chosen. Nobody else seemed to notice, but I couldn't shake the feeling that what we were seeing wasn't real. Another strange thing was the way he avoided certain topics. ask him about his family, and he'd change the subject. Mention his past, and he'd give vague answers that sounded practiced. He had this ability to redirect the conversation so smoothly that no one ever pressed him further.
Except me.
I started to pay more attention, to ask quiet questions when no one else was listening. And the more I asked, the more I realized how little I actually knew about him. The conflict grew inside me. Part of me wanted to trust him, to believe that he was the person I thought he was. But another part of me, the part that noticed the small cracks, couldn't ignore the signs anymore. It felt like I was being pulled in two directions, loyalty on one side, suspicion on the other. And then came the moments I couldn't explain at all. Times when he disappeared without reason, when he gave excuses that didn't make sense, when his carefully polished mask seemed to slip for just a second before snapping back into place. Those glimpses were brief, but they were enough to confirm what I feared. There was a side of him I hadn't seen yet. And deep down, I knew that side was about to reveal itself, whether I was ready or not. The night everything came to a breaking point started out like any other. It was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of evening where nothing feels out of place, yet something in the air keeps you uneasy. I had been turning questions over in my mind for weeks, questions about him that I couldn't answer no matter how hard I tried. The lies, the vanishing acts, the strange way he always seemed to know more than he should, it had all built up inside me like a storm waiting to break. And that night, the storm finally began to roll in. We had made plans to meet, just the two of us. I told myself it was my chance to finally understand who he really was. But from the moment I walked into the room, I felt a shift. He wasn't the charming, easygoing version of himself that everyone else knew. He was quieter, guarded, almost as if he could sense what I was thinking. His eyes followed me too closely, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was studying me just as carefully as I was studying him. The conversation started out simple enough, but every word felt heavy. I asked casual questions, but beneath my calm voice was a need for answers. And each time I tried to push closer to the truth, he dodged. His smile flickered, his tone sharpened, and the mask I had seen for so long began to slip again. Only this time, it didn't settle back into place so easily. I noticed his hands trembling slightly when I mentioned the inconsistencies in his stories. His jaw tightened when I asked about the nights he disappeared. He tried to laugh it off, but there was no warmth in that laugh anymore. For the first time, I wasn't sitting across from the person I thought I knew. I was sitting across from someone I couldn't recognize. The tension in the room was thick, almost suffocating. Every second stretched longer. Every silence weighed heavier. My mind raced with possibilities, each one darker than the last. What if everything had been a lie from the start? What if the person I had trusted the most had been hiding something I couldn't even imagine? I could feel my heart pounding as I pressed further, unable to hold back anymore. The questions spilled out faster, sharper, demanding answers he wasn't ready to give. His calmness cracked, his words faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flash of something real in his expression, something raw, something unsettling. And then came the moment where all the tension that had been building finally snapped. His face changed, his voice dropped, and in that instant, I realized that everything I had suspected was true. The mask was gone now, and what I was about to see was the real face that had been hiding all along. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Just when I thought the mask had finally come off, I realized I was wrong. What I saw in that moment wasn't the full truth. It was only a glimpse, and what came next pushed everything to a level I never expected. His expression hardened, his voice dropped lower, and for a brief second, I thought he might finally confess. But instead, he leaned back, almost as if he had been waiting for this moment all along. The calm that returned to his face wasn't reassuring. It was chilling, like he had just switched into another version of himself I hadn't seen before. That's when it hit me. What if the person I thought I had unmasked was still hiding behind yet another layer? What if the real face I had just seen was only a second mask, one he used when the first one cracked? That thought made my stomach twist, because if that was true, then I still didn't know who I was really dealing with. He started speaking slowly, carefully choosing each word, as though he wanted me to hear only what he allowed. But between his sentences, there were gaps that revealed just enough to raise more questions than answers. He hinted at things I couldn't understand, connections that didn't make sense, and a past that seemed far more complicated than I ever imagined. It was no longer about small lies or inconsistencies. It was about something bigger, something that reached far beyond the stories he had told me. The more he spoke, the more I realized how little control I actually had in that moment. It felt like he was leading the conversation, guiding me down a path he had already mapped out. And every step I took made me feel like I was being pulled deeper into something I wasn't ready for. The fear I felt wasn't just about who he was anymore, it was about what he was capable of. The second twist came when I noticed something strange. He wasn't just reacting to my questions. He knew exactly what I was going to ask before I even asked it. It was as if he had rehearsed this confrontation in his mind over and over again, preparing for the moment I would finally corner him. And that's when I realized the truth. He hadn't lost control at all. I had. The stakes suddenly felt higher than ever. It wasn't just about unmasking him anymore. It was about whether or not I could get out of the situation without losing more than just my trust. His eyes, cold and steady, told me that whatever game he was playing wasn't close to being over. And as he leaned forward, lowering his voice to a whisper, I felt the air grow heavier. The real face I had been searching for was closer than ever, but the terrifying question remained. Was I ready to see it? The silence between us felt unbearable. My heart pounded in my chest as I waited, wondering if this was finally the moment the truth would come out. His calm expression didn't break, but his eyes, they gave him away. There was something in them I hadn't seen before, something sharp and unguarded. That was when he spoke the words that made everything fall into place. He admitted that almost everything I thought I knew about him was a lie. The stories, the details about his life, the perfect image he had built, it was all carefully constructed to keep people from seeing who he really was. I felt a wave of anger and disbelief, but also relief. At last, the truth was spilling out. He explained how every smile, every word, even his presence in my life, had been part of an act. He had hidden behind a mask for so long that even he had started to believe it. And now, finally, he let it slip for me to see. But just as I thought the confrontation had reached its peak, another twist came. The shocking part wasn't just that he had lied, it was why. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice, and revealed that everything he had done wasn't only about me. I wasn't the only one he had been deceiving. There were others, people I knew, people who also trusted him. Suddenly, the weight of his lies spread wider than I had ever imagined, and the thought of how many lives he had touched with his masks sent chills down my spine. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier, as I tried to process what I'd just heard. He wasn't just someone hiding from me, he was someone hiding from everyone. The face I finally saw wasn't simply his true self, it was a warning of how deep the deception had gone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I realized the person I thought I had known all this time was gone, and in his place was someone I couldn't trust again. The conflict between us was resolved in one sense. I finally knew the truth. But the final twist left me unsettled. If he could fool me so completely, how many others were still believing the mask he wore? And that question is what still lingers with me to this day. After that night, nothing felt the same. I walked away carrying the weight of what I had learned, replaying every conversation, every smile, every detail in my mind. It was like my memory of him had been rewritten, as if the person I thought I had known never truly existed. The real face I saw was unforgettable, not because of how it looked, but because of what it represented, the truth hidden behind years of carefully built lies. In the days that followed, I kept asking myself why I didn't see it sooner. The little signs had always been there, but I chose to ignore them. Maybe it was easier to believe the version of him that made me feel safe than to question the cracks in his story. That realization became one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to accept. Trust is powerful, but blind trust can be dangerous. As for the others he had deceived, I found myself wondering whether I should warn them, whether they deserved to know the truth I had uncovered. But I also knew that people only see what they are ready to see. Just as I ignored the warnings until the mask finally slipped, they might not accept it until they face it themselves. That's when I understood something important. Sometimes the real face of a person isn't just about who they are, it's also about what we allow ourselves to believe. In the end, the conflict was resolved in my own heart. I no longer needed answers from him, and I didn't need to confront him again. I had seen enough. What mattered now was what I chose to carry forward. And what I carried was this: pay attention to the details, listen to your instincts, and never be afraid to face the truth, even when it hurts. That night taught me that people can hide behind masks for a very long time, but eventually, the truth always finds a way out. And when it does, it changes everything. That was the night when I saw his real face for the first time, and the night I finally learned to trust my own.